Listeners be advised. The Soliloquy podcast discuss matters related to the human experience and many that are sexual in nature. Due to this, some conversations may surround triggering topics such as sexual violence, self-harm, abuse, and much more. Please be advised, a list of crisis and psychological resources will be available in the show notes of this episode. With that said, let's get started with the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please as we go through the following safety instructions.
In the event that there is a loss of cabin pressure, oxygen mask will drop from the overhead. Place the mask over your nose and mouth. Breathe normally as oxygen is flowing even if the mask is not exposed. Be sure to adjust your own mask before helping others.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Soliloquy podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. This is your favorite host, Vernon T. Scott, also known as Slaytor Jackson, and for you freaky motherfuckers out there, Sebastian Adams. On today's episode, I have Edward with me once more, and we're talking about preferences, and I cannot wait to get into this damn conversation because we both are excited about this first topic, honestly. But before we go into that, Edward, how are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. It's a rainy little Saturday here in New York City, and I just went on a little walk with my neighbor and her puppy Pickle, and annihilated my whole life at the gym this morning, and just kind of chilling with the AC on. It's there's some workers in the apartment across the airway, and
and here we are.
Just low key, and here we are. Just me and the ring light and the microphone.
Yes, my running thing when it comes to like working out, I tell people all the time, I love to walk, but I'm allergic to running. And they always ask, like, what does that mean? Like, how can you be allergic to running? And I'm like, well, whenever I engage in running, I get heaviness of breath and I start to sweat. That's an allergic reaction. In any other context, is that not what it is?
Oh my God, you just talked me out of working out ever again. Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with you. I do like sweating in a gym capacity. I hate just being outside and being sticky and sweaty and gross, and I especially hate it like now, like living this 9-to-5 life in a suit and walking through like the humidity of New York City in the summertime and getting to work and just like dripping all over. It's like it's unprofessional. And I wish that my body didn't love to sweat as much as it does.
So before we even get into introducing yourself once more, do you have any, like, other than sweating, do you have like certain bodily functions that you're just completely disgusted by, like for yourself to do or others?
I don't know if this qualifies, but this happened at work the other day. I'm sitting around these guys who are making well over 6 figures, and there are 2 around me that just chew their food with their mouth open, and I fucking hate the sound of it. It drives me nuts. I don't know if that's a bodily function per se. It's not like burping or farting or anything, but like, just the sound of like, close your fucking mouth. Close it. Because if that food falls out while you are chewing it with your mouth open, I'm gonna lose it.
That's fair.
What are you for? Like, get it together.
Like, I can see how that can be extremely annoying too, and it's kind of disgusting. But
Yes.
For me, like, I hate coughing. Like, I don't care if other people do it, but whenever I have to cough, I'm extremely disgusted. Like, I hate getting a cold for that reason. Like, that's literally the only reason I hate getting sick, because I may have to start coughing. And like, I don't mind like having the sniffles. I don't mind sneezing, all that stuff. That's a part of life. But for some reason, throughout my life, coughing was just abnormal. It's just unhuman. I don't like it for myself to do it.
Well, if we're gonna go down that road, then like throwing up.
Really?
I hate it.
Oh, that's fair. It's
It's
uncomfortable, but I'm
terrible. I
I'm
mean,
not
like,
against it.
I'm so again, like, okay, so I used to be like a full-blown alcoholic, like functioning alcoholic, because everyone in New York City is basically a functioning alcoholic. Our entire lives, social and otherwise, revolve around the bars and going for drinks and meeting for drinks and having drinks and happy hours and everything else. And I was likely an undiagnosed functioning alcoholic for the better part of like 5 or 6 years, but like it got real bad during the pandemic because shut down. I was like, the liquor store down the street has an app that I can order from and they'll deliver it. Okay, here's my unemployment check. And so during that period of time, I ended up stopping drinking, and I would do like 100 days here, 200 days there, and I would just break my sobriety and I'd go back into drinking and then I'd come back to it again. I'm now in a place of not drinking again. But when I first broke it the first time, I went for gin gimlets with my friend Catherine at this social club I used to belong to. And I only had 2 or 3. And like for me, I'm again 6'4". I'm a big dude. I'm built like a shed, and I can carry my alcohol. But those 3 gimlets, even with food, I was puking the next morning for hours. And what I hate about it is that it's coming. Your mouth starts watering, you get hot and uncomfortable and like meh. And then it's like seconds until you can know and have the wherewithal to put your face in a toilet before everything you've ever eaten comes up. And then it's just the convulsing and the whatever and the things coming out and watching it, and it's so close to your face, and like I hate
I
it.
get that. Like for me, if anything revolving around puking, the action itself I'm fine with, but it's the aftertaste, disgusting. The dry heaving, why, body? Why are you doing this to me? It's
Because you've
gone.
poisoned it. You've poisoned it, and your body's like, get it out. I don't care what you say.
It's like,
Get it out.
stop torturing me. There's nothing else that's in there. Okay. You know there's nothing else in there. Listen to yourself. Stop this.
I know. I think it's your body just trying to teach you a lesson. It's like, if you do this to me again,
Just no.
I will make this worse for you.
It's just, oh God. But now that we talked about coughing, puking, sweating, as well as doing,
What is even
Edward,
today?
right? Edward, do you mind letting everybody know who you are?
I am a writer. I'm an author. I'm a producer. I'm a theater person. I am overall creative. I'm a singer. I'm a songwriter. I do all the things. I have music on Spotify that I've written under the name Edward the First. It's very regal. Go for it. And I also am the author of Cancer Musical Theater and Other Chronic Illnesses, which is being adapted into a TV show, which I'm very excited about. So overall, I'm just a creator and a creative person. But I do have that business brain that just like I have to scratch that itch. It's really fun for me.
We love it.
We love.
So, we're talking about preferences today. And I remember we were going in heavy on this topic of the differences between, well, preferences versus values versus fetishes or kinks. Go off.
Okay, well, I think that this needs to be an eased into conversation because it's a lot to cover, right? So when I hear people that are like, it's just a preference that I have someone who is tall. To me, that's not a preference. That's a fetish. You're fetishizing someone who's tall for whatever reason. You want to feel safe next to them. You have some daddy issues, which I welcome freely and clearly. That to me is a fetish. It's the same with like people who are like chubby chasers or who have foot situations, like they can't be with someone who doesn't have nice feet. Like to me, that's more of like fetishizing a thing about a person's body. Preferences to me is something that you can do without, because like that's what a preference is. Like I would prefer to be on an aisle seat in an airplane. But if I'm not on an aisle seat, I'm not going to lose my mind. It's fine. It's cool. So preferences are like, I prefer blondes. I prefer someone who can make me laugh. I prefer, well, for me, that's a non-negotiable. If you're not funny, like get the fuck out. I wish we had a little bit more time to brush up on this, because I remember the last time we talked about this, it was such a good conversation, and I feel like I'm not doing it justice right now.
Oh, you are doing a great job.
Thank you. But so like, to me, like, a preference is like blonde, or has big lips, or like has soft hands, or some, like, that's a preference. But then I think where we get kind of in the weeds is when we get to the values, where again it's like someone who makes me laugh. Well, that's someone who has a value. That's a value. If you're funny, that's a value. If or like, I need to be with someone who is ambitious in their career, also a value. And I think a lot of and back to the previous episode that we talked about dating online, like, I think by checking these boxes of things that are like preferences and height and weight and hair color and race and gender association and all of these other things, like, they all kind of fall under preferences. But I think a lot of the answers are actually more definitively kinks, or are more definitively like values.
Mm-hmm. No, I get that. Like, I know, I agree. Stuff when it comes to preferences, those are things that you can do without. Like, I oftentimes, when I describe what preferences mean to me, I always use the choices of ice cream. I can prefer vanilla because I enjoy that flavor. But if you tell me you ran out of vanilla and I want ice cream, I'm going to go to a different ice cream flavor. That it might be something that I like a little bit less. It might be something that I'm like, I haven't had this before. Let's see what happens. And I'm exploring some new kind of option. It's something that I'm not going to just make into a deal breaker, because that's not a preference. That's just having well, I already use deal breaker, but it's just your own personal prejudices, which is perfectly fine for people to have. It can just be just clear discrimination, and not mean like race discrimination, things like that. It's just like, I don't want that. That's a discriminating factor that I don't want in my life, and that's fine. That's cool. That's great. Love that for you. I feel like we're at a space where we just want everything to sound smoother and lighter than it is. So we use the less offensive word and just say, oh, it's just a preference. No, it's just, that's the prejudice that you have, and that's fine, and that's cool. No,
well, and I think that is also part of the conversation, and I mean, I can't really speak to this in the same way that you could, because obviously I'm a white guy. So like, I can't really speak to this on a personal level. I can from a fundamental level, but I think that is also like a subsect of what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So it's like kink versus fetish versus preference versus prejudice, where it's like, if you're going to say, I'm not going to date an Asian person ever, that's a prejudice. That's not a preference.
Mm-hmm.
Because what if like the most beautiful Asian man in the entire world came up to you and you were really into them, but then you're just like, well, I couldn't possibly do that. Like that's racism. That's prejudice. Now I could understand on a similar ilk of this, if you're saying like in the ice cream conversation, like, today I am really in the mood for chocolate ice cream. And I'm going to fucking get chocolate ice cream, and I'm not going to compromise on getting chocolate ice cream. And to me, that is saying like, I'm really in the mood to like hook up with a ginger today. I'm feeling ginger butt. It's what I want. And so anyone else who is not that, who comes to you and says, hey, I'm available, would you like to like get together and play a little bit? If they're not ginger, then that's just not what you're into right now. But that's not to say if that person, like, there's so much nuance here. I'm not doing this justice, but you know what I mean.
You're fine.
You know what I mean. Like, if someone who was like dark haired came up to me on the day that I wanted ginger, it would be like, no.
And I get that. That's completely fair. That is just saying, this is what I'm in the mood for, and I'm going to go after that, and I'm going to pursue that. And any other day, you have the option. So I truly get that. That in a sense, that is definitely playing within the realm of preferences.
The Holiloquy podcast focuses on the variability of sexual expression. When it comes to sexual expression, we often depend on pornography to illustrate how one must perform sexually. For those who have not learned this by now, the stuff you see in porn is not real. Pornography provides a singular perspective of sexual expression that is not often the reality we see during our own sexual encounters. The Holiloquy podcast is a conversation that takes you outside of the compressed box of what many know about sex. Some of the topics we discuss includes kinks, condom usage, status disclosure, and past sexual experiences. The Holiloquy podcast steps out on sexual norms and recognizes that the norm is not the only normal. Subscribe today and join the conversation.
Do that. And any other day, you have the option. So I truly get that. That in a sense, that is definitely playing within the realm of preferences. And I agree with you. Like, there's some days when I'm just like, you know what? Like, I've been hit on by other plus size men too, and I'm just like, that's not what I'm looking for today.
Yeah,
like,
that's not my journey. That's not my journey.
Today. That doesn't mean tomorrow we can't hook up. It doesn't mean next weekend we can't hook up. It's just today. That's not what I'm looking for, because look, I'm commonly in those spaces with like having like other plus size men, and I just need a little bit of variety today, and that's what I'm looking for today,
and that's okay. And I also think that the conversation of hooking up with versus dating versus being in a relationship with someone long term, I think that also then changes this conversation.
I agree.
Like if you were like, I will hook up with someone who is plus size, but I will absolutely not date them, then that's a form of discrimination, because that's like you get to get your jollies, but you don't need to be seen with them in public. We see this a lot with, I know there's a big conversation about this with plus size women online, where they're talking about like these fucking hot like muscle dudes who want to come over and fuck them, but then they won't date them, or they won't be seen in public with them. And if they do, they pretend that they don't know them, or like they know them in a different way than they say that they do. And that is preference and prejudice. Right. You would prefer to hook up with someone who looks a particular way or is a particular thing, but then you're also then not willing to be cool about it in a public sphere. Like that's again so much nuance here.
No, I agree. Oh, by the way, just let you know, the name of this episode is going to be titled "I'm Feeling Ginger Butt." Just so you know that.
I'm feeling ginger butt. I mean, to be honest, there's ginger butt, there's dancer butt. Dancer ginger butt is really kind of like on the Venn diagram of dreams. Like it's bullseye right in the middle.
But yeah, I totally agree with you there. Like for myself, I've experienced some people who will rather be with me on the down low or whatever, but not want to, accept or recognize the spectrum of what our relationship is in public. Like, that's why if I'm choosing to date somebody and I want to have a long-term relationship with them, I do not date anyone that is on the down low, because I want someone who can love me out in the open and appreciate me, because first and foremost, I get that you love my body, I get that you enjoy having sex with me, but at the end of the day, if you cannot accept me in public, then this is not going to go far for you, and you're going to hate losing that access to me, and I'm going to make sure you know that you lost that access.
Yeah, block. Well, and I think also, now that you're saying all of this kind of is like a bingo card, right? Like it's in this particular situation where you're talking about a plus size person that you're willing to be with behind closed doors but not in public. I think that's kind of all four things. That's a kink, that's you're fetishizing them, it's a preference that you have that you're not cool with letting other people know that you have that preference, and then it's also prejudice because you won't be seen with them in public. So in that kind of scenario, like imagine if that was like, oh, I'm not going to be seen in public with you because you're black. Like, that is so much worse, but it's in the same column of like, I'm into you, I'm interested in you, it turns me on, I secretly really, really love this particular thing, but when it comes to opening the door and being out in public in the open around other people, like I can't be seen with you. Like, that to me is all four things.
I agree. Oh, this is a very interesting conversation. I'm loving it.
It's so fun. It's funny too, like the dynamic in which we find ourselves attracted to people and how much we allow socially acceptable influence upon that is so weird to me. as long as, obviously, as long as there's nothing illegal, like, it's like, who
Yeah.
cares? Like, if you're into big people, then be into big people. Like, if your friends have a problem with it, then maybe you need better friends.
That that part right there. Like that's the thing that really confuses me when being in my adult, like when I was younger. Yes, I can understand the mindset of wanting other people's acceptance because I'm young. I'm like 18, 19, 20. I The opinions of other people actually has value. But as you get older and you're paying your own bills, you're making sure that you're working, you're doing all these things, you've experienced life outside of being somebody's child for the most part. Now I'm at a point where why does any other person's opinion care? And with other adults I engage with who are about my age, 30 or older than 30, some younger than 30, like 25, 26, people within these age ranges. And I'm like, why particularly do you care what other people say about who and how you choose to live your life? What value does their opinions add to your lived experience? If they don't like you, does it take away safety from you? Does it take away your living arrangement? Does it take away somebody paying your bills? What value does these their opinions truly have in terms of who you're dating?
I mean, I have a very unique perspective on this only because I have lived an experience where I nearly died, right? Like the whole
Mm.
cancer thing was for real. It was very rare. I planned a funeral. It was a whole thing. And so coming out, I already didn't give a shit when I went into that situation, but then having experienced that and coming out on the other side of it, I really don't give a fucking shit. And it's because you get to see when you face your mortality like that, what really matters and how much bullshit you allow in your life. Again, even going into that situation, being very low tolerance for bullshit anyway, then having that happen and coming out on the other side where I barely skated by living it just becomes like I just don't have the tolerance. I just don't. And so if someone is going to be like, I can't believe that you're dating a plus size person, I'd be like, I can't believe that you're my friend. Get out. Don't talk to me ever again.
Like, why are you upset?
Right. And even if that relationship doesn't work out, like, it doesn't matter. Like, if someone is going to be that judgmental of what you're doing and who you're dating and who you are sexual with, you don't need them.
That
It doesn't make sense. Like, you get to live one life. Why would you not do absolutely everything possible to make yourself happy in every way that you can?
mm,
And if that means hooking up with plus size people or underfed people, live your dreams.
mm.
Live that twink life. No one cares in the end. And if you are within a circle where people care, I'm thinking of like the hot insta gays, get out.
I'm screaming because you literally just equated twink to underfed. I can't.
Well, I mean, listen, I was a twink once upon a time, and that is because I was 18. I had no money, I had a fire metabolism, and I was not eating. So, like, that's where that comes from.
I'm screaming.
Maybe that's the episode title, Underfed.
Underfed but bred. Oh,
Underfed and bred. There we
see,
go.
I'm sorry, y'all. I am so sorry. Usually, whenever we get to these episode titles, I'm like, that's going to be it. Like, I did not expect this to
It keeps
happen.
listen, it's allowed to keep changing. It's
It
fine.
is. Look, y'all gonna hear that like what? But why is the episode title this now?
Right.
Here you
Like,
go.
we'll have 3 more by the end of this. It's fine.
Right, right. Here we are.
Here we are. Yeah, I mean, it's just like it baffles me. Like, why are you in a social construct that people care what you do?
Mm.
Like, if I decided to date like my 600-pound life, like whatever, if I made that decision, not a single one of my friends would be like, what are you doing? They'd be like, cool, we really like them. Or if they didn't really like them, I think that's a different conversation too. I trust my friends. Most of them I have been friends with for well over a decade. And if I was dating someone and my friends were like, they're an asshole, I'd be like, shit.
Right.
I gotta break up with this person now.
I understand that personally.
Yes. Ooh.
Gotta have good friends. Gotta have good friends. They'll tell you things that you really need to hear. So
Yeah.
I know how that can be. Another thing that we discussed was race play, and if I remember correctly, you were just like, no.
It's a hard stop. It makes me I think it's one of the things that makes me the most uncomfortable, aside of like scat, blood, and drugs.
Mm.
I just can't. And what's really funny, and I keep seeing this, there's an ad for something around the city. I don't remember what it is, but it's supposed to be, I think, for a game or like an arcade company or something. And the ad is race, play, more. And I'm like, race, play more?
Mm.
Race, play more. You don't have a gay person on your team. That is my immediate thought. You do not have a gay person on your marketing team at all. Race play more? I would like to never race play ever.
Mm. I get that. Like for me, whenever I think of those people who engage in that, of course, I'm like, if that's your thing, I love that for you. But when it comes to me, it's very uncomfortable for me. I
It's so
cannot.
uncomfortable for me. I don't like it on any level. I don't like the suggestion of it. I don't like being asked to do it because again, I'm a giant white guy. Like there's a feeling I'm sure that comes along with that under the scope of race play, and I just am not willing to fulfill that situation for anyone. And I
Mm.
get asked more frequently than I would care to admit.
Oh, wow. And that's shocking. Like I've like personally, when it comes to dating any individual that's not non-black, that's one of the thoughts that I think about is, okay, are you engaging with me in terms of wanting to, live through a fetish, a kink, and is race play something that you're into? Because if not, we can just go ahead and just stop this where we are.
And could you imagine if you were dating someone who did not disclose that, and then all of a sudden one day they just decided to whip it out while you were hooking up? Like, could you imagine? Like, that gives me so much anxiety.
And I think like if I were to be in that situation, most definitely it depends on how deep we are in our relationship at this point. First off, I know we're going to have a conversation.
Right.
We're going to
The
talk.
brakes have been slammed, and it's like, okay, please exit and let us discuss, because that's just not, I just don't think that's something you spring on someone. And not that this example is like the same thing, but once upon a time, way back in the day when I was probably like 20 years old, I hooked up with this guy who, out of literally fucking nowhere, didn't ask, didn't mention it before, out of nowhere, we're doing the thing, and he just winds up and cracks me across the face,
Oh my.
like as literally hard as he can. And I just froze, and I looked at him and I was like, don't ever do that again.
Mm.
And that was kind of the end of that. Like, he didn't finish, I didn't finish, and I was like, you can go.
Yeah, like no.
That's not something you just do.
It's
That's
not.
a discussion. And so for me, if there is any kind of even reference or inference or suggestion of violence inside of like your kink and fetish, I want nothing to do with it. And for me, race play falls under that. I like that's to me, that's violence, and I don't want anything to do with it.
Mm-hmm. I get that. Like I know, like I'll have to admit on my end that I've engaged in sex with some. I haven't hit anybody, like slapped them as hard, but I have participated in some like choking, but nothing like. I would say not like strangulation, but a little bit of pressure around the throat or
Yeah. Well, and
whatnot. And
that's also a discussion.
yeah, it's definitely
That
discussion.
isn't just something that you like pull out and
Mm-hmm.
you're like, I'm just going to start strangling you.
Like there was, it would only happen once where I was like just in the moment, and this was a lot when I was a lot younger and not really thinking things through. When I like did a light strangulation, a little bit of pressure around the throat area, but afterwards I was like, we didn't talk about that. Like that to me, that was not okay.
That's a
And
no.
a huge no. Don't do that, people. Don't be like younger Vern. That can be scary for some, and you don't know other people's traumatic experiences. And fortunately, that person wasn't triggered by anything, and they actually communicated with me afterwards, and they weren't freaked out by that or anything. But you know that's not the situation for every person. So it's like you have to be mindful of these things. You can't just throw these things on people and just hope that they'll be okay with it. No, no, we need to talk. We need to communicate about this. And I know, like, even if my future partner happens to bring that up and we have the conversation, I would think that I will be okay with still being in a relationship with them, depending on how our connection is at that point. But I will let them know in terms of that play, in terms of that expression of yourself, I just can't be that motherfucker for you. You
No.
would just have to find somebody else. And if they're uncomfortable with finding somebody else, then I'm like, well, that's going to be a need that's not going to be met within this relationship. So now we need to talk about our relationship dynamics. Like what's going on, what's going to happen with us going forward.
Right. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, for something like that, I don't think I fall under any categories that necessarily would make me feel this way, but and I don't want to speak for you, but in that circumstance, for me, if that is revealed to me and that's what's going through your head, then this relationship's probably over. Like that's not an itch I'm willing to scratch. And if that's something that you need, then you're not going to get that here. And maybe that's an open relationship conversation where it's like, if you need to go do that, you can go do that. But this not in my house. Like, no. Because like I remember the last person that approached me about this, and they were and it's also the straight out the gate thing. It's not like, hi, hello. It's like, hi, you're hot. I want to do this. And it was like, I want you to pretend that you're a plantation owner and that this, and I was like, you can stop right there. None of that is happening.
Wow.
Like I don't understand.
That's like these bots that's on some of these apps that's just programmed to, I don't know if they're actually programmed to reach out to darker skinned people or whatever the case is, and it's automatically asking, hey, do you want to be my sex slave or some shit like that? And I'm like, the fuck?
Not the S word.
I'm like, whoa.
Oh
Or
God.
just to the little sugar daddy concept things. I'm like, no.
And
let's stop.
and the thing is, like, I'm not here to like kink shame or fetish shame anyone. Like, do what makes you happy. Of course. I just find that for me specifically, anything that references anything like that, I shut down. It's not who I am as a person. I don't want to do that. Like, even people, I I hooked up with this deaf guy in Arizona once. The nicest guy, so hot. He wanted me, because he was deaf, to say terrible shit about him while I was hooking up with him. He couldn't hear it. And then he also wanted me to like choke him while that was happening. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to choke you. I will happily put my hand in your neck area. And as far as saying bad shit about you, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. But he was deaf, so I could say whatever I wanted and it wouldn't matter. And he told me that like feeling the vibration of someone like aggressively talking against his body was like kind of hot to him. And I was like, that's a sensory heightened situation that I know nothing about and sounds hot.
Yeah.
Like put me in a vibrating chamber. Like that's basically, like, again, he was smaller than I was, so like me yelling aggressive things at him probably like felt, I don't know, I can't speak to that. Anyway, I did it, but I also was just saying like kind of nice things about what we were doing, and I just said it in a very aggressive kind of way. It was funny, yeah, but therapy.
I kind of like that. I kind of
Therapy,
like that
everyone.
on some level because, like, I think about the person I'm currently in communications with. It's a huge gray area with my life right now. But
Yeah.
the person that I'm talking to at the moment, and I've thought about like different forms of intimacy that I would love to experience with this person. And one of those things is actually just laying on their chest while they sing, and I just hear just
Oh, I
feel the
love that.
vibrations of their voice and just get to like embrace that. And I'm just like, oh, that would be so amazing. Like, oh, like these kind of intimacy things is what keeps
Yeah,
me moving. And I'm a sensory person too. So it's like, yes.
I love that. That's cool. I like that a lot.
So yeah, like me and that deaf person, we're on the same page. I don't know about the aggressive language because look, the only time I want to be called a slut is whenever I ask my partner to slut me the fuck out. That's the only time. But we're not in this moment.
We love a slut.
Like,
Oh my God. I mean, for real. It's like, I don't know. I think we should talk about sluts. Let's talk about sluts.
what about
Um, I think that they are doing God's work.
them?
You know, I think it has something to do with the honesty and transparency of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Having been in relationships that 100% of the time ended because the other person was like cheating, and those were not the parameters that we had set. Like outside of like the 2 open relationships I've been in, the parameters were broken and lied about. And so I think I appreciate transparency with someone's sexuality because it's like, yeah, I know you're out there getting plowed by the neighborhood, and that's fucking great. I love that because I know what you're doing, and I feel safe with that person because it's like, it is what it is, and I'm here for it. Like, I love that. It's this freedom of expressing your sexuality and your desires and your needs and your wants, and owning it. And like, again, that authenticness of being who you are and what you want. And if that is like, you know, having the zip code run a train on you, then here we are, you know. That's fine with me. And for me, I think I really do think that it has to do with like honesty and transparency.
Yes.
Do I fetishize honesty and transparency?
Hey, you might. It may be a value.
I might. It might. Is it a value? Is it a fetish? Is it a cake? Like this is. I'm so interested to kind of like create a quadrant Venn diagram of all of this,
Yeah.
and like really separate and break down things that are kinks versus values versus prejudices versus preferences. Because I think it is such an interesting conversation that maybe isn't had as often because of maybe like the taboo of it all. Like people don't want to admit that they have a prejudice, because we've seen that before where people are like, well, I'm just not into Latino people. I'm like, that is a prejudice, sir.
Right. But like thinking about the slutty thing, because I do identify as a whore, a hoe, and slut is very welcoming.
My pronouns are slut, whore,
and Trump. Okay. Like I'm all here for it. And like, oh, it's funny because when you were talking, I was like, I kind of want to mix Woman Like Me by Adele and change that to Slut Like Me because might as well. But like, there's something, like you said, having those honest conversations with people, and even with the person that I've referenced earlier, I enjoy the fact that I can have a conversation about how I just had a threesome with 2 people, and there's no like issue there, and that's fun to me. And that means like they're enjoying my slutty interactions, me living my whole life and everything like that.
Your
And they're
whole life.
I said ho, you know what I said.
Oh, I thought you said your whole life, and I was like,
no,
your whole life.
ho.
Both. Why not both?
Both works. But yeah, like it's great because we get to engage in those conversations, and I guess they get to live vicariously through my wholeness, and I get to share that with somebody who sees it in a respectful way, because it's all about the communication. It's not about me going out here doing things to hurt this person or not communicating and things of that nature. It's just they know what they got when they found me or when I found them. And we've had these conversations, and it's a great thing. And I love that more people are more open to having the honest conversations with their partner these days. But at the same time, there's those who still continue to lie as though, oh, I have to go behind their backs.
Yeah. And is that a fetish? Do you like, I know that there's a whole fetish of people who cheat. Like that's,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like, not gonna lie, I think it's kind of hot. Um, when it's not me.
Right. But I think there's a space for it because to even go into
There's
the
absolutely a
next,
space for it.
like the next topic is consensual non-consent in kink play. And I think there's a space for consensually cheating on your partner that you can that is approved.
Right, but
Like,
that's just being open. That's just an open relationship.
in a
That's
way,
that's polyamory to a
it
degree. You know,
is to a
that's,
degree, yes.
you know, like for me, the parameters within a relationship are always like, you can hook up with whoever you want, but until like, but if you're then also gonna like go to dinner with them and socialize with them, then like for me, that's a no,
Mm,
unless we're both in on it.
I get that. Like, I know, like, for myself in the dynamics of a relationship that I will love is that I can communicate with my partner to let them know, hey, this is who I will be hooking up with. How do you feel about that? Does that make you uncomfortable? And, just to have the honest conversations and respecting their boundaries and their sense of self. Now, also understand when certain things are coming from insecurity. So we can talk about that too. It's like, okay, are you feeling some type of way because you feel jealous because I'm hooking up with this person? Do you feel like they're going to steal me away? Let's talk about it so that we can have a full understanding. And if that ends up being a threat to my relationship, then that is when we're just at that point of, okay, I get it. I don't want to engage into that and ruin anything that we have together. So I don't have to engage. There's other people out here. There's a billion motherfuckers on this damn planet. So I could find one of those other billion people and engage with them. Well, 11 billion, but I could find one of those people and engage with them. That way you're not feeling threatened about our relationship. And I'm still, engaging in these things. Mhm.
Well, and before we get into the consensual non-consent part of this, this brings up a question. Um, the period of time in which you're in a relationship where you're not open versus when you start being open is, do you enter the relationship being open? Do you have a period of monogamy before you get to that point? Obviously this is preference, of course, like anyone can do whatever they want as long as there's communication and transparency and everyone abides by the rules and everyone's safe and happy and cool. But for you, like, do you feel like there should be or is or the relationship might do better when there's like a couple month period of time where there is this monogamy piece so that you can get to know each other's bodies and rhythms and brains and like heart and figure out what's going to work for you in the long run?
So for me, most definitely, if I'm like serious about dating a person, I already let them know I'm on the poly spectrum, and let them know I'm very open to open relationships. But when it comes to like, I guess, the hierarchical poly side where I have my primary relationship, and in terms of building that relationship with that partner, that's where I want to maintain a sense of monogamy where I'm focusing on them, getting to know them, building that foundation amongst each other, and building our intimacy, getting to know them, getting to know their bodies, and experiencing them for them, and learning in depth about who they are, versus sharing my attention with these other people. And I will even notify those individuals that I were intimate with, those who may be friends with benefits and all that, and just let them know, hey, we can still be friends, but you already know the sex is not going to happen. Because even right now with the person that I'm getting to know, everybody that I consider friends with benefits, someone that I'm hooking up with and knowing that it's not going to be anything romantic, they know about him. And they're all willing to respect the boundaries of whatever forms within the relationship. Literally, one of my friends told me, like, oh, you're literally my favorite side piece. I was like, bitch, how the fuck are you going to say that? But at the same time, I was like, I respect that. At least I'm a favorite, I guess.
Well, and
So,
I think a lot of what this comes down to, and what we keep going back to with all of the conversations that we're having, is communication. And just being able to kind of like have that communication line open with whomever your partner is, whether it's a primary partner, your main partner, a secondary partner in a poly situation, if it's just like a hookup that you're within an open relationship with it, all of it just comes down to talking to each other and having that, like, we're on the same page, we're standing on the same ground, and this is where we're maneuvering from. And I think in my experience, that is always the breakdown of how things end, because somebody hasn't communicated, because someone felt that they needed the relationship to look and or feel a particular way to everyone else, so that the you and I part of this falls apart, because then it's performative, and then it's like, you know, you have your Instagram couples, and like it's just like, fuck my life with that. But you know, I've been in dating situations where, like, let's take a picture together. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, this is like, you know, I'm happy to do it later after we've been together for a little bit longer, but like, this is like date 4. I don't need to be on your Instagram feed. Like,
Yes.
but again, it just comes down to being able to convey and communicate what you want. And to tie that into like the fetish thing, the consensual non-consent, I'm not consenting to any of that. But if the two parties are involved, you know, adult humans who are involved, have the conversation, establish parameters, decide what's okay, what's not okay, what we do like, what we don't like, then like, sure, that can be a thing that you do. For me, again, anything that falls on the spectrum of violence, I'm so uncomfortable with. Maybe part of that has to do with the fact that I'm a gigantic white man, and like, things are going to fall on me one way or another, because that's just who I am. So it just makes me so uncomfortable thinking about doing that.
I get that. Like, when it comes to like consensual non-consent play, for me, there's some scenarios that I'm open to experimenting with, some that may be somewhat physical, but not too, like, I don't want there to be anything that's left with bruises. I don't want anything to like make me actually feel like I'm in danger. I want there to be like, I'm a huge fan of role play already. Like, am I okay with being slapped? Sometimes, yes. Am I okay with my boundaries being pushed, which is often the times what happens within consensual non-consent? Yes, I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable with that. But if it's something where I feel as though I may end up being triggered by it, I don't want anything to do with it. Like, I just don't. I don't want to be engaging in a sexual experience and I re-traumatize myself. And it could have been avoided altogether. But
Yeah.
I want to just like, bitch, you brave, you got this, you could do this. No, Bernie, you're not that brave.
Bitch, you prayed.
Like, it's not for you. Don't.
I love the idea of like praying before doing like a rape role play. Like,
Wow.
the dichotomy of that is hysterical. Like, dear Jesus, get me through this rape play scenario without being triggered. Give me the strength to allow them to overpower me. Like, that cracks me up. I think that needs to be like a TV series of some kind.
I'm done. Like, I during a event that I was at, I had the pleasure of experiencing, like, there were two adults in this scenario. So for people who are going to get creeped out by what I say, just know that's the case. But they were participating in consensual non-consent play, where one of the individuals were like a pastor and the other one was a child acolyte. Is that the word that you use for the children that's in the church? Whatever. I forget. But
like an altar boy.
yeah, there we go. That's the word. Altar boy.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Wait, hang on. I grew up Catholic. I should be better at this vernacular. The accolades, acolytes.
There we
Acolytes.
go.
There we go.
There we go. We're full circle moment.
Right.
So there's the priest and the acolyte, and they're just, you know, engaging in what would be considered very uncomfortable for most to watch, in terms of they're forcing the child to, like, well, the child in this scenario, again, an adult,
Right, adult,
to
quote unquote.
to
Just to be clear.
right. This is not one of those situations, y'all. But they were forcing the child to pray for doing the wrong things, and for them to pray meant sucking the pastor's dick.
This is so interesting. I mean, again, like, as long as you're not hurting anyone and everyone's consenting to everything, like, cool, fine, whatever, do whatever you want. I also think, excuse me, that, like, live out your fantasies, live them out. If that is an itch that you need scratched, I keep going back to scratching itches. Do I have a fetish for scratching
Right.
itches? Do I? Like, not for me, but like, if as long as you feel safe and no one is being hurt and you are in fact an adult, then like, I don't know what to say to that. Like,
Right.
it's kind of like the race play thing. Like,
Mhm.
probably not a thing I'm gonna be hopping on a bandwagon for. I grew up Catholic. That would hit maybe a little too close to home for me to be able to participate in that. In a good headspace.
Mhm.
But there's a fetish for everything, man. Like,
Right.
people have kinks and fetishes for literally everything. When I was in the hospital and was like fully like bloated, bald, and chemoed up, like, there were guys who were into that. They literally were like fetishizing the fact that I was hospitalized and like incapacitated from my normal state. And I think it's a power thing
Mhm.
where like this person is depleted and I can take advantage of them, in that kind of sense, which is maybe like consensual non-consent in a sense. I don't know,
Mhm.
maybe that's why I have issue with it. But I like fucked my way through cancer because I thought it was going to make me feel better about myself. And those guys who like had kinks and fetishes for people who were hospitalized, I
Mhm.
remember what you look like, bitch.
I'm talking about you.
If I ever see you on the street. No, it's not like that. But I mean, there, like, that kind of was a really eye-opening
Mhm.
experience for me, where it was like you hear that like with the internet, like, oh, there's something for everybody, and you're like, no, okay, maybe not. But that whole experience was like, oh,
There is.
there definitely is. And it would worry me, and I'm sure that there are people that can, I mean, obviously there are people that can speak to this better than I can, but like, I think of people who are like handicapped, who are like in wheelchairs, or like, have the need for the walking stick things, or someone who's chronically ill, who's maybe hooked up to an oxygen machine. Like, I would be so scared as a person who has had that life experience to be dating someone, because I would be terrified that they would have a kink or a fetish for my situation. And that doesn't make me feel good. Now, I certainly know queer people who are living that life experience, whether it be like cerebral palsy or they're partially paralyzed or whatever the case may be. I actually went on a date with a guy a really long time ago who was in a wheelchair. He drove a Mercedes, loved him. I was in Colorado, and I went on a lunch date with him. His whole situation was so awful. He was 14 and he and his brothers were playing around, and they had a gun, and they were like, run. And he was running through a field and they were like shooting at him, and they ended up hitting him in the back. And so he was paralyzed from the legs down for his entire adult life.
Oh.
And obviously he sued them and he won and got money, and he owned a bunch of properties, and he basically just sat around collecting rent from people to like get by, and he lived a very comfortable life. And I went on a lunch date with him, not knowing that he was in a wheelchair. Like, I met him online. I think his screen name was like Silver Wheels or something like that. And it didn't occur to me that that was not a car, because he drove a silver Mercedes. And I was like, oh, yeah, great. He got there in the silver Mercedes, and then like opened the car and like unfolded the wheelchair situation onto the street. And we had the best time. And I did ask him if he was afraid of people fetishizing him for that, or like being with him for the wrong reasons. And he was like, no, it has happened, but I think I'm just happy to have connection.
Oh.
And part of me doesn't like that, because it's like, well, you shouldn't settle for less than you
Yeah.
deserve. And I'm saying this from a point of like, when I was in the hospital, I was settling for the lowest common denominator because of how I felt about myself. And it was very much like, you look disgusting, you're dying, go fuck whoever will put their hands on you, because like that's the only way that you're going to ever get laid ever again. That's just like where my head went. But I think there's a very interesting line between being with someone because you want to be with them and being with someone because they have a thing that you fetishize and have a kink for. And again, communication, as long as we're all okay with that, then cool, cards are on the table facing up and we know what the deal is. But you know, the consensual non-consent thing, any kind of violence, the race play thing, like if that's just something that's going to pop out later, that was like a little card that you had up your sleeve that all of a sudden you're slapping down on the table now. Oh, I don't know how I would even react to that.
Yeah, I get it. The craziness of our no, I can't even say society, just sex in general and getting to know other people is wild. Love it though. Love the experiences. So before we close out everything, are you ready for a would you rather?
I love a would you rather.
So I don't know how I'm still processing this one because I did read it a little bit. So it's, would you rather watch your significant other have sex with their best friend or watch them have sex with your best friend?
Oh,
Right.
I think for me, I'm probably not gonna like either of those scenarios, but I think for me, I would prefer to watch them have sex with my best friend. Because then I at least have a sidebar to have a conversation with that person in a different way that I'm more comfortable with, to be like, hey, like this is just what this is. Like it's not gonna be on that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's my answer.
Like,
What about you?
I feel like for me, I would rather watch them have sex with their best friend.
Okay.
And I also feel like on some level, I won't even find that attractive or sexy at all. Like either way, like if they
Yeah.
had sex with my best friend, that's just going to be a conversation where just like, I cannot believe I just watched you have sex with my partner. Like, we are going to need to have a therapy moment because, like, for me, my best friend is like my sister to begin with. So, like, well,
Well,
more than just her.
I was gonna say, like, it's the dynamic of the friendship. Like, I've known, first of all, my best friend is straight, so like that would never happen. But like, it it would be like watching a family member have sex, and like I don't want to do that. So like,
Exactly, and that's how it is with all of like everyone I consider a best friend. They're like
yeah,
family
they're
to me.
family.
So it's like I don't want to see my sister or brother having sex. Most definitely not with the person that I'm fucking.
I'm
So
dating. No, absolutely
like,
not. It'd be
we're
horrifying.
right. But like for them, if that's the dynamics that they have with their friend, I guess like enjoy. Like I do
Yeah.
have a friend that I've and I do consider them a best friend, and we've had sex before. And it's we're just like, okay, that didn't work well for us, and it is what it is. Like if that was the case, then yeah, I can be like, hey, I'm volunteering you as tribute versus everybody else because we've already engaged in this and I know what to expect and everything.
I am volunteering you as tribute. Get
Like,
out.
like enjoy, have fun, and I'll just be over here watching.
Oh my god,
Um,
not the Jennifer Lawrence of it all.
but like for them, if my significant other and their friend had a similar situation that they've had sex together before, like cool. I'm not going to have any emotional attachment to their or sexual attachment to their friend because I'm like, okay, that's your best friend. To me, those relationships are important, so I don't see
Same.
myself ever like violating that, like going after their best friend because I'm sorry, I found you first and I was attracted to you and
Yeah.
I built that bond with you. Now, if it's like within the first 2 weeks of us knowing each other and I just see we have no loyalties here.
Right. This is a lot of dynamic happening.
Look, the hoe is coming out at this point.
I mean, I don't, yeah, I mean, I don't, but then again, like back to the last time you asked me this question, like I'm a very tactile person. I want to touch, I want to be touched, I want to be involved in the bodies and movement of them all. So like, would I just watch, or would I want to like be a part of it? Like, I don't really know. And because I'm thinking about my best friend, and like the answer is no across the board. But like, if it was something that was gonna happen, I'd be like, all right, look, like, we've been friends for this long, get it out of the way, I guess. Like, I don't think I would have an issue with it in the long run. I think it'd be a lot of like mental fucking happening in the short term, but in the long run, as long as we were all cool about it afterwards and talked about it and we were all on the same page, like, fine.
Look, just sit down. Like, okay, so is everybody uncomfortable in that?
Is everyone uncomfortable? Or like, are we good? Do we want that to happen again? Do we not want that to happen again? Are we all traumatized? Who needs a Actually, this is something I want to talk about. So this is a newer term, I believe, but it's the term of being aside. And I think these two questions that you've now asked me, the would you rather, are kind of like side questions, like the watching, the not participating, the observing, the voyeurism of it all. Like, I don't think I fully understand what a side is per se, but like, I know it's somebody who doesn't want to do penetrative sex. And so like, I literally had this conversation like 2 days ago because some guy was like, I'm aside. And I was like, what? Cool. But I think that that's such a different, I don't want to say different, because obviously like I've known people who is this just because like we have a term for it now?
I feel like in a way, yes, because now people are able to self-identify through the definition of that term so that they can utilize that to be like, okay, this is who I am, and this is how I can express that and communicate that with other people. But there's also within the side, not necessarily with sides themselves, but just in sexual expression, you still have the asexual people, the aromantic people who just are not focused on romance or sex. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just so much.
Well, and I think that's the beauty of it too. Like, there's, again, something for everyone. And having the terminology around anything is helpful, because then you are able to point to it and say that. And I guess that's kind of like an awakening that has happened within the queer community with the terminology of side now being available. And I don't know how long it's been around or how long we've been using it or whatever, but it's new on my radar.
Yeah. It is, I would say it's pretty recent. I think it was used more frequently in like the UK. And then, with research and other people understanding what that means, and it's shifting over here to the States. And now you're just like, oh, okay, that's what that is.
Right. We're catching up.
We're catching up. On that note, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience or leave with them? Any special messages?
I mean, I think for the theme of the episode, like, it really is just kind of like, embrace your inner hoe, like embrace your inner slut, and have a very frank, transparent conversation with yourself or partners and or both of what you want. Because like, again, we only live here once and we only get to do this one time. You're only the age you are one time. And so make the most of it. And if that is like going crazy and having sex all the time, then like, great, that is not my journey. But like, if you want to do that, as long as everyone is consenting and happy and whatever, cool. But yeah, live your hoe truth.
Yes. And find some ginger butt.
And live your whole truth.
Love it. Well, Edward, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Now I'm going to go find some ginger butt.
Yes, as you should. And to the audience out there, thank you all so much for listening to the Holiloquy podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. And just in case no one else told you this today, you are beautiful. You are worthy of happiness and joy. You are enough and then some. You may not live up to the expectations of others, but that is okay. You are only required to walk in your own shoes. May each day you live lead you towards abundance. With that said, love you all and see you next episode. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Holiloquy Podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. You can subscribe to the podcast through your favorite podcasting app and find us on the web at www.holiloquy.com. That's www.heauxliloquy.com. Share the podcast with your friends and join the conversation.